Timberwolves facing elimination. The Nuggets looking to punch their ticket to the Western Conference Finals. And now a steal. This could be fun. Edwards to the rack.
This is the Minnesota Timberwolves from game 1 and 2.
Edwards on a move to the rack. A dominant, authoritative bounce-back win from the Minnesota Timberwolves.
They know I was in there. Yeah, I told them. I said, I'll see y'all motherfuckers for game 7. Yeah.
Anthony Edwards is the truth. The Timberwolves force a game 7 with a 45-point blowout of the Nuggets. What is going on with this series? Edwards scored 27 points to pull the T-Wolves out of their mid-series slump, deliver a flawless 115-70 victory over the Nuggets in this roller coaster series.
You guys are facing elimination coming in here. Like, what do you think led to just the response that you guys had tonight?
We got Mike Conley back. That was it.
Did you really tell the locker room staffer in Denver you were going to be back for
Hell
game
yeah. They know I was in there. Yeah, I told them. I said, I'll see y'all for game 7. Yeah.
I love that energy, and I need that energy this morning. Good morning, team. Stephen A., I'll say hi to you again, because obviously I didn't really give you a good hello this morning. Monica McNutt, Tim Legler. How's everybody doing?
We all good. We all
All
good.
right.
Great. Friday.
All right. Let's talk some playoffs here. Tell me this, Stephen A., what statement did you feel like the Wolves made?
Well, that was a beat down of epic proportions. We never saw a reigning defending NBA champion lose in that fashion. I think the previous high, the previous length of a defeat by a champion was by 36 points. They were down by 50. A slew of dunks and step back three-pointers. He showed, obviously, the young star that he is. He responded to the challenge. What I walked away from, y'all, though, was this. As Minnesota was winning and running away with it, and I mean really, really running away with it, I saw Jokic on the bench. He was not sitting down. He was standing up, and he was just staring at them. And he had that look on his face like, I'm going to get you bastards. I'm going to get y'all. I'm going to get y'all. It was one of those looks, you know what I'm saying? I mean, obviously I had Minnesota winning this series, but y'all know this, Monica, because obviously you played Tim Legler, because obviously we know what you've done in your NBA career, and you've been covering the league exceptionally well for decades. You know what that look is about. There's certain things that you just see. And it's one thing to just be sitting on the bench. It was a bad night, and you know, damn, we getting it given to us, and all right, that's fine. But it's another thing entirely when the superstar, who is the best player in the world, who is a 3-time league MVP, and happens to be the reigning defending NBA champions, is just standing there staring at them and just looking, not at his own teammates, looking at Minnesota. Like, I'm going to get y'all. I'm going to get y'all. I'm not going away. And the only thing that I will say is that Tim, and Tim will remember this. Eminem, I don't know, because you might have been a little bit too young. You might have missed this. The Chicago Bulls in the 90s obviously were champions. And I remember in a regular season, it wasn't a playoff game, it was a regular season game. And the Knicks were finally ready. They were finally ready. You legs, you know where I'm going here. You know where I'm going here. And the Knicks were finally ready, supposedly. And the Garden was packed, Eminem, and it was shaking. And Chicago came into town. And the Chicago Bulls were getting blown out of the building. They were down by 30+. Jordan got hurt in that game. Had to be taken to the locker room. Remember this, legs? Had to be taken to the locker room. Yep. It's a regular season game, Eminem, but everybody knew that the Knicks and the Bulls were on a collision course. Jordan has to go, needs help going to the locker room, Eminem, and then comes back out. And doesn't even look at Phil. Goes right back in the game and is diving for loose balls and everything and looking at the New York Knicks. Y'all got to tell, I'm coming for y'all. I'm coming for y'all. And it was that message. And all of us as Knicks fans, we were like, oh, damn. You know, it's a blowout win, but we don't know how advantageous this is for us. We got our little night here, but that man coming back, and sure enough, he did, and ultimately bounced the Knicks out of the playoffs when the playoffs arrived. All I'm saying is I saw a little something like similar to that looking at Jokic last night when they were down by 50. He was looking at the Timberwolves like, I'm going to get y'all for this. And that's all I'm going to say about that. That gave me cause to pause.
So, Stephen A., I did as well notice that, right? And post-game, Jokic was asked about standing, and I was kind of hoping it was going to be something mindful, like I couldn't get comfortable with that loss. He said he was trying to stay warm so that he could go and lift, which is his post-game routine and allows him to stay in such phenomenal shape, which basically is not getting comfortable. Same concept, right? Without saying it.
He was lying.
I feel where you're coming from, but I legitimately, and I know this is first take, you got to pick a side, all that. I legitimately can see this going either way. I can see Jokic being angry and leading the way, and showing us and reminding us that he is a 3-time MVP and a reigning champion. I can see this being the legacy moment for Anthony Edwards and his teammates galvanizing around him. I think as you look at it, the statement that the Wolves made is that they are in fact here. But I don't know if that is a new statement that we didn't have from the first 2 games, if I'm honest about it, right? And so I just think you saw them take the level of competition and toughness up another degree. Anthony Edwards so often in this series has talked about Finchy, as he calls him, which I think is so adorable, saying that a team's going to punch, and so we need to punch back. The way that he was able to galvanize his team on both sides of the floor, the way Jaden McDaniels plays, obviously Mike Conley is a veteran in this league. We've talked so much about Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert and them needing to step up. And for them to answer in such an emphatic way, I'm willing to say that it's not about this team arriving early. Like this is the year in their minds, and it's very, very clear. And I think that's the statement that they made. And Game 7 in my mind is an absolute toss-up.
Well, here's the thing. And I think Michael Malone, Nikola Jokic, they're going to remind their team of this, right? This isn't about point differential. This isn't the in-season tournament. This is the NBA playoffs, and that's one game. And that's all it counts for is one game. Just like Game 2, when they were completely dominated and suffocated offensively, counted as one game. You played a game late in the regular season against this team to get home court advantage. They won that game. That's why this Game 7 is going to be in their building. That's what you played the regular season for. That's what you played that game for. So here we are. Now, having said all of that, I'm going to break it down real simply. This comes down to Jamal Murray, because when the Minnesota have sensed that Jamal Murray was not right, which let's go back to games 1 and 2. In those 2 games, he was clearly bothered by that calf to a much greater extent than he was in games 3, 4, and 5. They feasted on that. They pressured them. They got up in people. They didn't have the ability, Denver, to run their offense normally because they literally could not get these dudes off of them, primarily because their point guard was limited in the way he was able to go about this. He gets banged up again yesterday. They sense it. He's not right the entire game. They feast on it, and then it just piles up because Minnesota has that kind of defense that they can get this cumulative effect where you literally become completely futile once they realize that you can't operate your offense. So this, to me, Sunday comes down to Jamal Murray. If Jamal Murray shows up and Jamal Murray plays well and Jamal Murray looks like Jamal Murray in big games, Denver Nuggets are going to be just fine. But we got to wait and see what that's going to look like, Monica. I agree with you. Right now, as I'm sitting here, how can we possibly predict what that's going to look like?
Here's where I'm going with this, Tim. You can say that about Jamal Murray because obviously you could also say that about Jokic because obviously he's the most trustworthy, and I get that. But if there was ever an opportunity for Anthony Edwards to cement what greatness is, it's this one, because the true measure, Tim, of greatness, as you well know, is what you do, A, in big moments, and B, up against greatness. And so it's one thing for you to be in a moment. It's another thing when you're going against a 3-time league MVP who is clearly the best in the world, who has proven he shows up in moments like this time and time and time again and doesn't wilt beneath the pressure. Are you going to follow this 27-point performance where you exploded in the first half? Are you going to follow scoring over 40 in 3 of the previous 5 games with a dud in Game 7? if Anthony Edwards matches the greatness of Jokic tit for tat, you're probably right that it'll come down to a Murray or a Gordon against a Karl Anthony Towns or someone else. But the first order of business for Minnesota is for Anthony Edwards to be ready to be for Minnesota what he has been primarily throughout these playoffs where he's averaged more than 30. Recognizing the fact that Jokic is coming, he will be ready. I think that if any of us wanted a surefire, bona fide guarantee that messed with our wallets, we gonna bet on Jokic showing up for Game 7. The question is, are you going to be able to match to a point where we're able to look at a Karl Anthony Towns or Rudy Gobert, or Mike Conley Jr., or Nas Reed, or somebody else and say, who's going to be that supplementary piece that joins Anthony Edwards because he's going to need it because Jokic is going to show up and do his part. That is what we got to find out. And it starts, usually I'm bringing up the other pieces. Game 7, that starts with Anthony Edwards. He got to show up and be that dude for Minnesota on Sunday.
I mean, I think we all have, and there's equity with Jokic that we all acknowledge, but it's not as if Ant has not shown up in this series. The question has been, to your point, Stephen, at his supporting cast. And so as we've watched Ant come into his own this year in particular, he relishes sort of this, I don't even want to say villain, but like his level of competition is just so high. And so I'm pretty confident in Anthony Edwards showing up. It's the rest of the Timberwolves cast.
Listen, I appreciate your confidence. I'm confident too. What I'm trying to say is throw games 1 and 6 out. 1 and 6 out.
I got you.
Throw the first round out. Throw the regular season and the MVP consideration out. This is Game 7. This is Game 7. And more importantly, we got to remind our audience of this. When you don't show up in a Game 7 because you just don't have it, nobody's holding that against you because the expectation wasn't there. But when you've had it for the most part everywhere else, but suddenly Game 7 arrives, that becomes your epitaph. We know, listen, Anthony Edwards is A1. He's the Jordan of the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's the Kobe of the Minnesota Timberwolves. We understand that Scottie Pippen wasn't Jordan, but we got to remember that damn migraine, had that come in a Game 5, had that come in a Game 3, it would not have been as memorable. But because it was in a Game 7, you religiously hold that against them. Like of all the games, Game 7. Game 7 is a different onus. It's a different obligation. And Anthony Edwards, when we're talking about you as a star, my brother, and you are, make no mistake, Legs, I'll give you the last word. All I'm saying to Anthony Edwards is, you got to be the dude that we saw in a Game 7. You got to do that.
Tim, final word here.
The last thing I'm going to add to this, the very last thing I want to say real quick, here's what could be at stake on Sunday. This is how big and monumental this is. You've laid it all out. Well, a legacy game and all that for Anthony Edwards in a moment that he absolutely has to show up and be big. The winner of this game quite possibly has an inside track to winning a championship, which could mean Denver possibly repeating, which is a very difficult thing to do historically and something Michael Malone has challenged his team to do. Do you just want to be a champion or do you want to be historic? And then you got Minnesota, this team that has risen so quickly with the emergence of Anthony Edwards and adding some veteran guys with a unique size presence against a team like Boston potentially. Look, you got to get past either Oklahoma City or Dallas. I'm not going to skip over that. But that could be what is at stake on Sunday. An inside track to potentially winning an NBA championship, man. I cannot wait for this game to get here.